Welcome to A2Council Update, a recap of the Ann Arbor City Council meeting on May 6, 2024. This meeting included comments and discussion about amendments to change the standard of review for measuring the traffic impact of new developments, final approval for a rezoning and site plan for a 17-story building on Church Street, the fiscal year 2025 budget and associated fee increases, higher water, stormwater, and sewer rates beginning in July, first reading for a rezoning at 732 Packard, putting a charter amendment on the November ballot to establish a sustainable energy utility. This is the voting chart for the council meeting on May 6, 2024. All items were approved unanimously. You can find this voting chart and more information about this meeting at a2council.com. Like and subscribe if you would like to see more content like this. The meeting included a presentation from Stephanie Carter, Chair of the Independent Community Police Oversight Commission.
First of all, our training committee did meet with the police department training officers recently, and we were briefed on all of the training that our officers are currently receiving. As finally, on May 28th at our regular meeting at 6 o'clock, we are having a public forum. We want the community to come out and meet them. It is going to be again at 6. We will have a reception at 6 o'clock. We will start here in the night or listening or watching the meeting on TV. It is going to be at 6 at the West Branch Library.
After introductory remarks, public comments, and staff explanations, Council discussed agenda items for less than 55 minutes. 6 people signed up in advance to offer public comments. 5 people spoke to topics on the agenda. The consent agenda this week included 26 items and expenditures of over $5 million. Nothing was pulled for discussion. The consent agenda was approved unanimously. The meeting included a public hearing on next year's budget, which will be voted on at the next council meeting. Representatives from Washtenaw Housing Alliance, SOS Community Services, Rising Hope for Housing, A Brighter Way, and the Shelter Association of Washtenaw County urged council to renew funding allocations from last year. One resident spoke about money that has been allocated toward a feasibility study for public municipal power.
I'm really pleased to see it in the budget. But there's a but. If the study isn't designed right, we won't get the answers we need. A proper phase 2 should arrive at a well-informed valuation of DTE's assets. We've been told that this phase 2 will have a more limited goal. We owe the public a useful cost estimate before we decide to move forward with municipalization or not. Methodologies exist for placing value on utility franchises, including self-renewing ones. You don't just give up in advance and say it can't be done. It can't be done with certainty, but it can be done.
Council considered an ordinance amendment that changes how the impact of proposed new developments will be assessed. A measurement of traffic impact is removed in order to consider and acknowledge multimodal transportation. After brief comments in support, it was approved unanimously at second reading. Council then considered final approval for a rezoning, supplemental regulations, and site plan for a new development at 711 Church Street. A developer has requested the rezoning of 6 parcels from R4C to Planned Unit Development, or PUD. The rezoning will combine 6 parcels at Willard and Church Streets for a 17-story development with 273 apartments and storage for 400 bicycles. The developer has agreed to make a contribution to affordable housing, or payment in lieu, equal to 17% of units. At a public hearing earlier in the evening, residents spoke.
You have a professional planning staff with expertise and experience. You should listen to them and the recommendation to deny.
These buildings will be here long after the current private equity mania for college town luxury housing is over, long after the university's growth slows, and long after this council is no longer here. And adding insult to injury, we understand that the developer is only committing to pay $7 million into our city's affordable housing fund. Being conservative with the numbers, this is less than 5% of the approximately $151 million in rents this building will produce over its first 10 years. The beneficiaries, at least those we know of, are the private equity investors funding this development, the developers themselves, and of course the university. which can further increase its enrollment without having to worry about the cost of housing these students.
It must be discouraging for staff to write a well-reasoned report only to have council dismiss recommendations that offer a balanced solution to achieving city goals while being respectful of context, the existing zoning, and the neighborhood. Adequate justification to increase the density of the land 10 times over the current designation has not been provided. This is not being a NIMBY. This is about advocating for balance between the elements that make a neighborhood livable and sustainable with the influx of new development. Scale is important, and planning principles are important.
A representative for the developer explained that in exchange for the rezoning, more money had been offered.
The proposal was modified at Planning Commission to increase the affordability component, and we believe that the commensurate equation of what is being offered and what is being asked is much better now and should be deserving of the council's approval.
Other commenters responded.
We know the jig is in. We know that money owns this town and developers own this town, so it's really a shame.
More than 200 nearby residents signed a letter urging you to vote no. We received no acknowledgments from our representatives, nor from the mayor. I can only assume that serving constituents is not a high priority for you. Some of you claim that rent will decrease when the supply of apartments increases. That is not what I have observed. As each new building opens, charging higher rent than its competitors, small landlords also raise the rent on their houses. This is not a free market. Undergraduates are a captured audience, much like coal miners in a company town.
You know, while we all hope the comprehensive planning process would go faster, this is the tools we're left with in the meantime, and I think this particular petition fits the bill given the vacancy rate that's that's hurting so many people today in the city. So I urge you to support this petition tonight.
Although the council has already granted initial approval for this project, I really urge you to reconsider some of the specific details of the plan. I certainly think that a development on this site makes sense in the context of the growing university student body, but it just seems like the height of this structure is disproportionate to the neighboring buildings and blocks.
We need more dense housing near the university for its students, and we as a city need to create our own solutions and produce the environment for the private sector to create additional solutions.
We need tens of thousands of additional units of housing to be built in Ann Arbor. The university is not providing enough housing for their students, particularly as enrollment increases. The private market will need to fill the gap.
Ann Arbor is pushing taller concrete buildings as a mantra to developers and real estate interests, U of M, and political campaigns. Even the city planning staff and planning commission both recommended voting this down.
We now have an opportunity to build housing, increase our tax revenues, and add to our affordable housing fund, and slow the rapid and unsustainable increase in housing costs, all in a building directly next to the university. Please vote yes to rezone the site to a PUD.
I wish this were bigger and taller than what's proposed before you tonight.
I hope to see much bigger, more sweeping changes from council to reduce the ridiculous amount of bureaucracy the city currently puts in front of anyone who's trying to create housing in the city.
We need this project. We need more projects like it.
We should let this happen and let other things like it happen.
This gives us a great increase to our tax base that we could otherwise be losing to the university.
If it doesn't become luxury priced housing, it's going to become luxury priced something or other just because the demand on this land is so high.
Council doesn't listen to city planners nor the planning commission. Both bodies voted to deny the project.
I don't think that 200 people who already have homes that they own should be able to say that other people don't get to live close to where they work and study.
We are short tens of thousands of housing units. Please approve this rezoning.
Some commenters raised concerns about the child care center adjacent to the project.
And I think what I would like to hear tonight regarding the zoning of this is, this consideration of the impact of this construction and this rezoning on the 170 plus children under the age of 6 that call Towsley home every day.
There's a potential that we would have to move because of the impact to the school, which was built in 2010 to be a school for 50 or more years to serve the University of Michigan faculty and staff members.
A representative for the developer responded.
They have a very comprehensive safety plan, which was shared with the university, and opportunity to scrutinize that was given. All of that is a non-issue.
Council discussed the rezoning and site plan and rejected the assessment of city planners.
While I agree with much of the detail and analysis provided in the staff report, after careful consideration, I've come to a different conclusion. I've concluded that the proposal meets the requirements of the PUD ordinance. Staff found that the PUD benefits offered are not proportional to the rezoning request, and that these could be achieved instead through existing zones such as D2. I see this differently.
City staff answered questions from council.
We haven't had any of the discussions between the city staff, building department, and the developer. I cannot attest or speak to whether the developer has spoken to the University of Michigan or the child care manager directly. The height of the construction and fencing seems to depend on what type of construction is being proposed, how deep the hole is for the foundation. You can add a lot to a development agreement, but it has to be enforced. And you also it's a development agreement between two parties, between the city and the developer.
If you want to have feedback from a building official who can speak to the code, we would be glad to provide that. We simply don't have someone from building on standby for this evening.
Council emphasized their support for the project.
I hope folks don't think that it's political, that it's, private equity is funding or motivating the work here. It's economics, it's demand, supply and demand.
This project is one in a line of projects in which we will focus on creating housing supply so that we can work to effect and accomplish long-term community change, and I believe community benefit.
The rezoning and site plan for 711 Church Street were approved unanimously. After brief comments in support, Council unanimously approved an increase in water rates. Without discussion, Council unanimously approved increases to city stormwater rates and sewer rates. Council then considered first reading for a rezoning at 732 Packard. 1.3 acres between State and Packard will be rezoned from R4C multifamily residential to PUD, planned unit development. 12 lots will be combined to permit the construction of a 14-story building with 376 apartments, 82 vehicle parking spaces, and 329 bicycle parking spaces. The developer has agreed to sustainability features and contributions to the Affordable Housing Fund equal to 16% of housing units. Earlier in the evening, a lawyer representing a business on this block shared concerns about how the project had been presented to the city.
Our property, our client's property, is the dominoes at the triangular point, the owner of that property. What's been depicted to the Planning Commission and was approved by the Planning Commission, we believe erroneously, was a property that looks to be a plaza, a pavilion, an open area, doesn't show the Domino's building, doesn't show the fact that the proposed 14-story building there completely envelops our client's property on the south side and both sides as it's shaped like a V going around. The Planning Commission had an obligation to consider the detrimental impacts of adjoining properties. None was done. For whatever reason, the Planning Commission and this council were led to believe that our client's property is simply an open area, that it's part of this development, that it's already somehow owned by the developer. None of that is accurate.
Other commenters offered feedback.
I think in this particular location, it's going to help, having all of that new, people living there is going to help revitalize and activate a commercial area that's been a little bit troubled lately.
We have been very inconsistent with using and abusing or inappropriately avoiding PUDs. We need to reconcile our mess.
That whole neighborhood is all students, and a lot of them are crammed into single-family homes that are really old.
The rezoning of 732 Packard was approved unanimously at first reading. At a future meeting, it will be the subject of a public hearing and final approval at second reading. Finally, Council considered a resolution that will put a question on the ballot in November for a sustainable energy utility. The charter amendment will allow the city to create a limited opt-in fee-based program for the generation, transmission, and distribution of 100% sustainable energy, where it is possible to install solar panels and establish microgrids. The city would continue to rely on DTE. Council read statements in support for about 5 minutes.
It is a supplemental utility layered on top of the current provider. It will provide residents who choose to join the SEU with resilient, reliable, rate-competitive, 100% renewable energy.
Council voted unanimously to put the question on the November ballot. After approving the entire agenda, Council went into closed session for about 1 hour in order to discuss the purchase or lease of real property. The meeting ended at approximately 11:40 p.m. with no further public comment. For more details about this meeting, visit A2Council.com.
Welcome to this week's A2Council Moment of Zen.
I understand all sixth graders through Ann Arbor Public Schools attend a water plant tour, our facilities. So I feel like my hope is that every sixth grader in this city understands why and how we changed water and sewer rates. It's also on our website, including there's dashboards, the initial analysis. We've been talking about this since 2017. So the sixth grader who goes through that tour now, what are they, like 10 years old? They should know this pretty well. So I would hope that the adults in our community will understand their billing and how water is charged. There's also a YouTube video, should the actual study be a bit long and difficult. The video is amazing.